for me, the racism comes into it because because in Ireland, what we don't have is, like KKK driving around with shotguns or anything. It's not that. It's covert. I feel like I've explained this before. I feel like what we have in Ireland is tolerance, and we confuse that a lot of the time with anti-racism, which are two different things. And when you go through anti-racism and you understand white supremacy and you understand those things that are ingrained in all of us from birth that we have to unlearn, that's where you start thinking, why does someone think it's okay to touch my hair without asking for permission, or touch my child's hair without asking for permission? And it's like they feel entitled to be able to do that, and you have to challenge that, because those people wouldn't do the same thing to a white Irish person. Obviously they would expect the person to go, get away from my child. So it's challenging those sorts of things for me. That's where I see that's how I see racism in Ireland, in terms of the covert racism that happens. And it's quite difficult in those situations to speak up and to try and explain why that's inappropriate, or why you might feel uncomfortable with that, or why this person, like asking this person to try and take a step back and think about why they felt that was an okay action to take.
So I think the problem in the States is there's been a malaise, there's been a festering of discrimination because nobody wants to talk about it because it makes people uncomfortable. In Ireland, I think people do want to talk about it. That's why they're reaching out and they're touching our hair, or they're asking the questions, and it's pure naivety, ignorance. And yes, there probably is racism. There is a different form of racism, and correct me if I'm wrong, Irish people, that is here in Ireland, and it's more the Catholic Protestant thing. But I think they do want to know. They just haven't been exposed to it. Whereas I think in the US, it's a bit more nefarious. There's a maliciousness to it. And it comes from the fact that we know it's there. We don't want to talk about it. We rather make the racial slurs and commentary in our house. And out in the open, we're going to say, oh, we're diverse and we're inclusive. But realistically, you're not really. In deep down inside, there's a portion of people in parts of America that aren't. And that's been compacted by executive decisions, judiciary decisions, legislative decisions, especially with the impact of affirmative action that resonated out of the 70s and 80s in America.
The impact of it in the States is you can't get an education, you can't get a house, you might be locked up for a large part of your life, you can't get a job, and you might possibly be murdered on the street because of the colour of your skin. Whereas in Ireland, it's not systematic. The impact of it is made like a lot less. It's more of a personal impact, I've found. It's less of a systematic impact that is present in Ireland.
I would disagree. I would say that it is systemic in Ireland. And actually, there's actually a couple academic papers. This woman, Dr. Eben Joseph, she lectures on Black Studies in UCD, and she's actually written a couple of academic papers on systemic racism in Ireland and how it impacts people in terms of their employment prospects in particular. And that's been something, actually, not just her, but the Equality Commission and the Irish Higher Quality Commission, I don't know, the IHREC, there's so many letters, I don't know what they stand for, but they've done reports as well on it, in terms of, so before COVID hit, the unemployment rate in Ireland was 5.5%. For Black men, it was over 40%.
Those systems, although they might be slightly different to the ones in the US, which were potentially designed to discriminate, most of the systems were designed for those people before we came in. So what's happening now is that there hasn't been a conscious reassessment on how can we change those to actually accommodate the new wave of people who have actually come in. And elements of that, the system not being changed, are then creating some noise in some of the Irish people who are looking at their system, and their system is trying to incorporate. And so, for example, the rate provision system, they're looking at it thinking, oh, those guys are parasitic. Why are we letting them in? We just send them back. And they're using some of our resources. And why are they here? Why we don't even want them in our city? But if the system had adjusted to actually incorporate them in a way that demonstrates their value, and also in a way that quickly incorporates them into the Irish society. You'd find that we wouldn't have a lot of people hanging around these centers for 5, 10, 15 years without contributing anything, and then creating that negative approach. I've worked with guys in accounting who have actually, their parents came into the provision, and then those kids have actually become very successful individuals in the Irish society, and their parents, when they got the opportunity after many years of staying, they have also contributed to the society. So I'd say the key element there is, yeah, we have our systematic and process problems. They might not be identical to the US or the UK, but there needs to be a gear shift to acknowledge that our schools, to Deborah's point, they don't cover content from the Middle East. They don't cover content from Africa. They still continue to be exactly the same as they were 40, 50 years ago. And then that means that the kids will never see anyone who looks like them, who did anything of significance in history. So then they just have no frame of reference, and it makes it very difficult for the kids to cope.
What I'm beginning to see is the demographics are making this change happen anyway. I've had a chance to review, like, we've got 4,600 people, give or take. We've got 68 different nationalities. There is an underlying concern I have about the fact that we're relying on overseas staff a lot. And I think there's an element to that I'm kind of uncomfortable about. But we've got 15% of our staff who are Indian and Philippine nationals. So you can begin to see that ethnic diversity is driving a level of conversation